The night my brother got into Stanford's MBA program, my mother made a toast and forgot to mention my name. Not in a she was just excited kind of way. In a deliberate, practiced kind of way. She looked around that table, my dad, my aunt and uncle, 3 cousins, my brother's girlfriend, and she said, "To Ethan, who has always been the one we knew would do something extraordinary." I was sitting right there. I had driven 40 minutes in rush hour traffic to be there. I had brought the good wine, the one I'd been saving, a bottle of Napa Valley Cabernet that cost me $60 because I thought we were celebrating as a family. I poured it. I handed it out. And then I sat there while my mother made a toast that erased me from the room. That was 3 years before everything fell apart. Or maybe that was the moment I finally started paying attention. My name is Gwen. I'm the younger of 2 kids, and I have spent most of my life being the background character in my own family's story. Not the antagonist, not the protagonist, just the furniture, the girl who was fine, the one who didn't need anything because she never asked for anything, which everyone mistook for not wanting anything. Ethan is 4 years older than me. He's tall, he's charming, he laughs at the right moments, and he has always known how to walk into a room and make our parents feel like they had done something right just by producing him. My mother calls him the one who got her eyes. She says it like it's a compliment to both of them. I have my father's eyes. My father, who mostly reads the paper at dinner and nods when my mother speaks, as if agreeing is easier than existing. Growing up, I learned a specific kind of quietness, not shyness. I was never shy. More like a strategic withdrawal. I watched Ethan get the attention and the praise and the long phone calls on Sunday mornings, and I understood early that there was only so much warmth to go around in our house, and most of it was already spoken for. So I stopped competing. I just built something else, somewhere else, where no one was watching. I got a degree in computer science from a state school, not an Ivy, which my mother mentioned at Thanksgiving the year I graduated by saying, "It's still a real degree." People respect those two now. I moved to Austin 2 years later for a job at a mid-sized software company, and I was good at it. Better than good. I had a natural instinct for systems, for finding the place where things broke and building something around it so they didn't break anymore. The job paid well. Not Silicon Valley well, but Austin buying a condo at 28 well, which felt like winning to me. I didn't tell my family the details. I had learned that information shared with my mother became information deployed later, usually as comparison material. I also started something on the side the year I turned 27, just a project at first. Me and 2 colleagues, my coworker Priya and her friend Marcus, working on weekends and Tuesday nights over pizza in my apartment. We were building a compliance monitoring tool for mid-market healthcare companies, specifically for the documentation burden that was drowning smaller practices. I had watched my own doctor's office struggle with it. I thought there had to be a better way. There was, and we built it. By the time I was 29, we had 17 paying clients and a product that actually worked. By 30, we had a meeting scheduled with a private equity firm in Dallas. By 31, I was sitting across a conference table from people in very nice suits who were asking me how fast we could scale. None of this had anything to do with my family. That was intentional. The thing is, I still showed up. That's the part that took me a long time to understand about myself. I kept showing up even when there was nothing in it for me. Christmas, Thanksgiving, my brother's birthday dinners, my parents' anniversary party. I drove or flew home and I sat at that table and I poured the wine and I smiled. I don't know exactly why. Habit maybe. Hope, more likely. The specific kind of hope that's almost indistinguishable from delusion. And then Ethan announced his wedding. He was marrying a woman named Portia. And yes, that is her real name. She has mentioned it at every gathering she has ever attended. Who came from a family in Connecticut that had a particular kind of old money quietness. The kind where they don't talk about what they have, but everything they own communicates it. She wore the right clothes. She knew the right words. My mother loved her with an immediacy that was almost aggressive. The engagement party was at my parents' house in Charlotte. My mother had it catered. She had rented extra chairs. She had a floralist come in on a Saturday morning, which I know because she told me on the phone 3 separate times. She did not ask me to be a bridesmaid. Ethan did, eventually, nervously over text, a week after the party. I know it's kind of late to ask, he said, but we figured you'd want to be included. I sat with that word for a long time. Included, like I was a +1 to my own family. I said yes, because I was still showing up. The months leading to the wedding were a particular kind of slow erosion. My mother called me mostly to update me on the planning, which was fine, except that every call contained at least one comment that landed sideways. Portia's family is so generous. Ethan's doing so well at the firm. You look tired in your last Instagram photo. Are you sleeping okay? Once, memorably, I just think it's so brave that you're not worried about where you'll be in 10 years. I couldn't have done that at your age. I was 31. I had co-founded a company that was in active acquisition talks. I was not worried about where I'd be in 10 years. But I had not told her that. And because I had not told her, she had filled the silence with her own assumptions, which were not flattering. The wedding was in April, in Charleston, at a venue that had probably been a plantation at some point, and had been rebranded with white linen tablecloths and string lights. It was beautiful in the way that expensive things arranged by people with taste are always beautiful. I wore the bridesmaid dress, dusty rose, one shoulder, very Portia, and I stood at the altar and I watched my brother cry when he saw his bride come down the aisle, and I thought, good, he should have this. He actually loves her. The reception was where it happened. I should say, I knew something was coming. Not this specifically, but something. There was a particular energy in my mother that evening, a brightness that was 1 degree too high, the way she gets when she has decided something. She had been talking with Portia's mother for most of cocktail hour, the two of them with their heads close together, laughing, and every time I walked past, the conversation paused just slightly, the way conversations do when you are adjacent to the subject. The toasts were after dinner. My dad went first, sweet, brief, a little stumbling, the way his speeches always are. Then Portia's father, long and warm and full of the specific confidence of a man who has never once been talked over in his life. Then my mother. My mother stood up and she was radiant. She talked about Ethan as a baby, about the first time she knew he would be someone. She talked about Portia in glowing terms, about what a gift she was, what a true partner she would be. She talked about the family they would build, the children she hoped for, the future she imagined. And then she said, "We hope that everyone who is meant to be in this family finds their place in it." She looked at me when she said it. Not for long, just a moment. But I caught it, and I understood it, and I think the 3 people sitting nearest to me felt the temperature shift. I smiled. I raised my glass. I drank. Later, when the dancing had started and the lights had gone low and people were soft with champagne, my mother found me near the dessert table. She touched my arm in that way she has, light and proprietary, and she said she wanted to talk. We stepped outside onto the venue's side porch. The air was warm and smelled like gardenias, and the river was somewhere in the dark beyond the garden. It should have been a beautiful moment. It was not. She told me, conversationally, as if she were reading from a weather report, that she and my dad had updated some things. That Ethan's life was moving in a direction that required more support. That they had been putting aside money for years with the idea of helping both of us eventually. But that given the circumstances. And here she gestured vaguely at everything, at the wedding, at Portia's family, at some imagined future I was apparently not part of. They had decided to redirect things. "You've always been so independent," she said. "You never needed us the way Ethan did." "I didn't need you," I said carefully, or I stopped asking. She smiled the way she does when she doesn't want to hear something. "You're practical. You've always figured things out. We just feel like Ethan is at a stage where the support matters more." "How much support?" I asked. "The house fund," she said. "The account your grandmother set up. We're reallocating." My grandmother had set up a small fund for both me and Ethan when we were children. Modest but meaningful. Somewhere around $40,000 each at this point with the interest. I had never touched mine. I had not needed it. I had also never imagined it would be taken. "That's my money," I said. "It's a family account," she said. "It was always meant for whoever needed it most." That was not what my grandmother had said. My grandmother, who had died 4 years earlier and could not defend her own intentions, had said it was equal, one for each grandchild, meant to give us both a foundation. I remembered that conversation clearly. I had been 23, and we were sitting in her kitchen in Raleigh, and she had squeezed my hand and said, "This is yours. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I thought about saying that. I thought about a lot of things. What I said was, "Okay." She looked slightly surprised. She had expected, I think, a fight or tears or at minimum the satisfaction of watching me struggle. What she got was nothing, because I had understood something in that moment. Standing on that porch, with the gardenias and the dark river beyond, nothing I said would change anything. The decision was already made. It had probably been made long before tonight. Tonight was just the announcement, and I was already in my head on the other side of it. "Okay," I said again. "I understand." She patted my arm and went back inside. I stood there for maybe 2 minutes. I looked at the garden. I thought about Priya and Marcus and the due diligence process we were currently in the middle of, and I thought about the meeting we had scheduled for the following Thursday, and I thought about the number that had been put on the table in that meeting, and I thought about $40,000 and what it was and was not. Then I went back inside and I danced at my brother's wedding. I want to be clear about the timeline because it matters. The acquisition closed 11 weeks later. The number was not $40,000. It was not $400,000. The number, after everything, after legal fees and the equity split with Priya and Marcus, after taxes, was the kind of number that I still have not fully emotionally processed, because my brain keeps treating it like an abstraction. It changed my life in ways that are still becoming clear to me. I did not call my parents when it happened. I called my best friend Sasha, who screamed so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. I called Priya, who cried. I called Marcus, who said, I knew it 17 times. I went to a nice dinner by myself, a place in downtown Austin that I'd been meaning to try, and I ordered whatever I wanted, and I sat by the window and I watched the street, and I felt, not triumphant, not vindicated, something quieter than that. Something that felt more like relief. The news traveled in the industry before it traveled to my family. That's the way it goes with acquisitions. There are press releases, there are distri publications, there are LinkedIn posts. I kept mine brief and professional, but Priya tagged me in hers, and Marcus was effusive, and the company that acquired us put out a statement with my name in it, in a context that was hard to miss if you were paying attention. My mother called on a Thursday evening, about 2 weeks after the close. I saw something, she said in a tone I had never heard from her before. Careful, tentative. About your company? It was acquired, I said. Yes, the article said. She stopped. It said you were the founder, co-founder, I said. There are 3 of us. Silence. How long, she said. There are 3 of us? Silence. How long, she said. 4 years, roughly. Another silence. Longer. You didn't say anything, she said, and I could hear in her voice that this was working toward something, toward recalibration, toward the next move. I had been inside enough negotiations by then to recognize the sound of someone adjusting their position in real time. No, I said. I didn't. Gwen, I don't have a lot of time right now, I said. I have calls this afternoon, but it was good to hear from you. I hung up, gently. No drama. My brother called the next day. His approach was different from my mother's. Warmer, more genuine, I think actually surprised in a way she wasn't. I had no idea, he said. I feel terrible that I had no idea. You didn't ask, I said. It's okay. I should have asked, he said. Yes, I agreed. You should have. We stayed on the phone for a while. He asked real questions and I answered them honestly. And at the end, he said he was proud of me, and I believe he meant it, and it meant something, actually, even after everything. My mother's next call came 4 days later. She had regrouped. I could tell she had thought carefully about her approach, and what she led with was generosity. She was so proud. She had always believed in me. She had known I would succeed. The pride felt constructed, the belief revisionist, but I let her talk. And then she circled around to the point, which was the account. My grandmother's account. She wondered if perhaps, given things had changed, given how well I was doing, they could talk about what the right thing was to do. I let her finish. I've actually already spoken with an attorney, I said. She went quiet. I'm not interested in a legal process, I said. But I want you to understand that I know what the account was. I know what Grandma said. I have documentation because Grandma was the kind of person who documented things. So I don't need the money now. You're right, things have changed. But I want you to know that I know what happened. What I did not tell her, I had already set aside the equivalent amount, plus the interest, in a fund in my grandmother's name. At the community foundation in Raleigh that my grandmother had supported her whole life. It would give out small scholarships annually to first-generation college students. The first grant was already being processed. The money was already doing what my grandmother had actually intended for it to do. Give someone a foundation. Gwen, my mother said. Her voice was different now. Something had shifted, though I couldn't quite name what it was. Maybe the edge of something real. I love you, I said. I love our family. But I'm not going to pretend that what happened didn't happen, and I'm not going to make it easy to just skip past it because the circumstances changed. She said she understood. I'm not sure she did. We still talk. That is the complicated, imperfect, very human ending to this story. I did not cut them off completely. I did not move to another city and disappear. But I changed the terms. I stopped performing gratitude I didn't feel. I stopped arriving early and staying late and filling silences to make other people comfortable. I started taking up the space that had always been technically available to me, but that I had been quietly, systematically taught not to occupy. The first Christmas after the acquisition, my mother made a toast, and this time she said my name. She talked about what I built. She was proud, and the pride was visible and large, and the room reflected it back, and I sat there and smiled and said thank you. Later, doing dishes, my aunt touched my arm and said, "You've always been the quiet one. We should have paid more attention." "Maybe," I said. "What made you keep it to yourself for so long?" she asked. I thought about that for a moment. About Tuesday nights over pizza. About the server that crashed at 2 a.m. and the three of us in a group chat talking it back from the edge. About the first client who renewed. About the look on Priya's face when we signed the acquisition paperwork. I wasn't hiding it, I said. I just stopped waiting for permission to be proud of it. My aunt nodded like she understood. I'm not sure anyone fully can, from the outside, but it felt true, and it still does. The foundation made its first grant this past spring, a 19-year-old named Destiny, first in her family to go to college, studying biomedical engineering in Ohio. I got a letter from her, handwritten, on notebook paper, and it said she was grateful and she was nervous and she was going to try her hardest. I put it on my desk. I look at it sometimes when I'm having a hard day, when the business is complicated or a deal falls through or I'm tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. It's not revenge, what I built. I know that's what people want to call it. I understand the appeal of that framing, but revenge implies the point was always them. And they were never really the point. The point was the Tuesday nights. The point was Priya and Marcus and a problem we're solving. The point was my grandmother's voice in her kitchen in Raleigh telling me this is yours. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I finally stopped letting anyone tell me otherwise. I keep coming back to one moment, not the acquisition, not the phone call with my mother after the press release went out. The moment I keep returning to is smaller than any of that. It's my grandmother's kitchen in Raleigh, the afternoon light coming through the window over the sink, and her hand over mine on the table, saying, "This is yours. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She was talking about money, but she was also talking about something harder to name, the right to occupy space, to be counted, to not have your existence treated as a footnote in someone else's story. It took me a long time to understand that what happened to me wasn't unusual. Families sort themselves into hierarchies, often without meaning to, sometimes without even noticing. One child becomes the one everyone points to with pride, and another becomes the quiet one, the capable one, the one who doesn't need anything. And because she doesn't ask, they assume she doesn't want. And because they assume she doesn't want, they stop looking. That invisibility does something to a person. It either breaks you down over time, or it sends you somewhere quiet and private, where you build things no one can take credit for and no one can diminish. I went the second way. I don't think that makes me stronger than someone who went the first way. I just had Priya and Marcus and a problem we're solving, and that was enough to give the energy somewhere to go. What I've learned, and this is still settling even now, is that integrity isn't about what you do when people are watching. My family wasn't watching me for years. I built anyway. I honored my agreements with my co-founders anyway. I did the work that needed doing at 2 a.m. when a server crashed on Tuesday nights when I was tired, through every doubt and every quarter where growth was slower than we'd hoped. That consistency, that refusal to cut corners even when no one would have known, is what made the thing real. Character is what you are when the audience has left the room. I had a lot of practice performing for an empty room, and I think about my grandmother's money, the $40,000 I never needed and never got, and how I took that exact amount and put it somewhere it could actually do what she intended. A 19-year-old named Destiny, first in her family, studying biomedical engineering in Ohio. She wrote me a letter on notebook paper. She said she was nervous. I could have told her, good. Nervous means it matters. Nervous means you're doing something real. That redirection, taking what was taken and turning it into something generative, that required something I'm still learning to call wisdom. Not intelligence, though that's part of it. Wisdom is slower. Wisdom is knowing that the response to injustice doesn't have to look like revenge to be right. It just has to be true to who you actually are. My mother said I was always the independent one, like it was an explanation. But independence isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, usually in response to a closed door. Every time I was overlooked, I had a choice. Knock louder or go build my own door. I built. That's the whole story, really. Gwen didn't win because her family finally saw her. She won before they looked up. And that is the only kind of winning that actually holds.